Chapter 4. Tag lay on his bed as his tour bus rumbled down I-25, away from Casper and toward Denver. They'd finished up the last few stops on his hometown tour, which had been as successful as anticipated. Bo had arranged photo ops with people from Tag's past in every city, adding to the hype and excitement. Each Instagram post had been more like, each commented on more than the last, and the YouTube video he'd recorded of a soft, acoustic version of Roxy's song, minus the begging at the end, had millions of views. In a fit of spite over how she'd reacted, he'd even titled it that. That's how he'd always thought of it in his head. Besides, after his stunt at the concert, everyone knew exactly who that song was about anyway. His conscience had been eased momentarily when a comment from Roxy popped up on a link to the video that his official Facebook page had posted. "I've always loved this song. Congratulations, Tag. Your friends are so proud of you." The fact that she hadn't answered the phone call he'd made after he saw it said that she'd posted it to keep the small-town gossip mill in Little River from blowing up over what the song meant, making everyone think his bid for her heart had been something for publicity. She hadn't responded to the crazy number of replies on her comment either, some asking if she was the Roxy. People in Little River kept answering with affirmatives. Everyone knew about Roxy being Tag's high school sweetheart. "You would have had to have dated me at least once to be that, wouldn't you?" she would have said to him. Back in those days, she'd laughed off every attempt he made to show her how he felt, saying she couldn't trust him to be serious. He'd never given her a reason to, and when he'd reminded her of all that the night he'd tried to make her follow him, she'd laughed then too. "That was just flirting. You never followed it up with anything, and now you expect me to just run away with you on our word that you meant it all that time?" The way the night sped by in dim shapes along this familiar freeway reminded him of road trips with Roxy. He'd made her drive, and he'd sit in the passenger seat with his guitar, serenading her. "Someday I'll have to drive this road myself, only listening to you on the radio," she'd said. He'd take her hand, kissing her fingertips until she pulled away and slapped at him. "Someday you'll be with me in my big old tour bus, darling." She laughed at his fake southern twang and shook her head. "You'll never be serious about me, especially not when every girl in America is throwing themselves at you." "I'll always be serious about you," Tag hummed to himself and cast a longing look across his bed. Roxy wasn't here. He'd always assumed that eventually he'd have her company on these long trips, or her sweet voice on a phone call to make it go by quicker. More words spilled into his head, and he pulled his notebook closer. In the month since he'd seen her in Little River, he'd filled half the pages with lyrics, lines that Bo nodded over with pride when Tag let him hear a few. Roxy had always inspired his words in a way he couldn't make her understand. It was the hitch in their relationship. He spoke fluent country love song, and she only knew enough to get by. Didn't trust that his heart was in those words. This could be his best album yet if he could hang on to how she made him feel. Even the way she'd lectured him burned inside him. He scribbled something about flames and lighting a match, then tapped his pen against his cheek as he tried to come up with words that rhymed. Patch, snatch. He scowled out at the scenery. Ranch. Ranch. He could make those words sound right in a song. He sang to himself, fitting it in, and grinned as he wrote in the margin. Then it struck him harder. He didn't have to rely on those fleeting moments with Roxy at the trailhead for 10 Falls. He strummed a few more chords, experimenting with the lines he'd written down, not surprised when they flowed through him like a creek that fed that waterfall. Laying down his guitar, he picked up his phone to text Bo. "I need a favor."